Paul, hi, and welcome to the Business Growth Mindset Top Achievers podcast.
Thank you.
Cannot tell you how privileged I feel that you are here today. And as we were just saying off air, it's the first time I've ever seen you in a t-shirt and cap, and it really personifies the, the culture at your new role. I mean, even though you were chairman before, now CEO, I'm going to let you talk about it a little bit rather than me kind of steal your thunder. But a small caveat for our listeners, we are friends, and I've had the privilege of calling you a mentor in certain areas, particularly after a couple of glasses of wine and shooting away at things that I could improve on in my life, and I'm very grateful for that. So, Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, and I guess this incredible journey that you've had over the last 30 years.
So I'm currently the CEO of Vinomofo, which is an online wine retailer. We'd be the third or fourth biggest in Australia doing that. I've been around Vinomofo since with Andre and Justin, sort of helping them before it was born. I'd had that combi van parked on my front lawn while Andre played cards till the wee small hours of the night, and so it was not as surprising to me or my family that I joined Vinomofo as it was to people going, "I thought you were the SYC guy," because I'd been the SYC guy for 20 years.
That's right.
And I didn't want to be the SYC guy at the end of my career, as far as that's all that I got remembered for, though I would be proud to be remembered for that. Like, I did a pretty good job, and SYC is a pretty great organisation doing great things.
Do you want to share a little bit about SYC?
Sure.
Like, what do you do? And I think it's a beautiful story, and also maybe just explain to our listeners where SYC was when you started there and what it is today.
Sure.
And also the way that you've handed over a legacy to another really smart person in the process.
Well, I got when I left school, I thought I wanted to be a journalist, and I got into journalism, switched to communications after a year of that, but then just got into business. Like, I started my first business taking photographs of cars because I'm into cars. And I worked in a photo shop, and the photos were pretty crummy that the people were bringing in, so I said I could do them better, and went, oh man, this is like, if you offer value, you get paid. And so I sort of got into my own businesses of different sorts, or pursued photography in different ways, and that took me to Sydney, and I got into business with some people selling water filters, and that was pretty successful. And I came back to South Australia, did some consulting, and then had sort of a life-changing moment, but it led me to join SYC for a year. So SYC back then stood for Service to Youth Council Incorporated. It was a small registered charity in South Australia that worked with young people who had fallen into homelessness. And it was started in 1958, so it was 2002 that I joined. And one of the things that I'd never worked in not-for-profit before, never thought that I would work in not-for-profit, and I thought I would only do it for a year. So 18 and a half years later, I was still there. But when I joined, one of the things that SYC had really done was champion youth homelessness. And people used to call them street kids and truants and all that sort of stuff, but SYC really championed a more respectful approach to what was happening for young people, and it was something that deeply affected me around going, we just treat young people in Australia so poorly. We think we don't, but we do. But anyway, that really struck me. But what also really struck me was it was an organisation in the not-for-profit sector had this kind of thing where there was some worthiness around going earnestly broke, which I just couldn't get it. So back, it wasn't very fashionable in 2002 and 2003 to start thinking in terms of business approaches for not-for-profit work. But in my mind, I was like, if you're not building wealth in the organisation, how are you going to deploy wealth to give people with disadvantage the best opportunities? So
Absolutely.
I went about building an organisation that could hire the smartest people you could get, that could do the best work possible, that could join up as many services as possible. So, you know, in business terms, it'd be like, oh, you did lots of vertical integration and all that. So, you know, if you put a person genuinely at the centre of your work and you serve them really well with a really strong service mentality, you end up providing lots of services to them, and it becomes a seamless experience that, if you do it really well, makes them prosperous or happy or healthy or all of those different things. If you want to call that vertical integration as something fancy, knock yourself out. But really great service. Anyway, SYC grew to, it had members value of $429,000. It was about to run a deficit of nearly $600,000 when I took it over, which is, it had regularly done it, had regularly survived doing that sort of thing. But when I left, it's got a balance sheet now. You can look it up on the ACNC, so it's not confidential information, but it's got a balance sheet of $30 million. It's got more than 40 different properties and all sorts of different things. So it's been, by lots of measures, a pretty successful organisation. If it was possible, I would have loved to have owned shares in SYC with its success. But it was something that, you know, I'm immensely proud of, the work that the organisation does and that I did with that organisation. It taught me a lot about, I took lots of risks there that were not risks as in, they weren't risks to our social licence to operate, so they weren't sort of dodgy, loose risks, but they were things that people said, you're not supposed to do things that way, and it's like, well, I don't see why not. So we did it, and it was successful, and now other people copy it, which is cool. And it then led me to, it was interesting, I kept saying, I don't want to be the CEO of a not-for-profit. And then somebody really smart said, well, why don't you just be a good CEO then and stop qualifying it by the place that you do it? And I was like, that's actually really cool. So I just really tried to be the best at that I could. And that led lots of people to asking me how you do CEOing things or leadership things. And I was a bit, you know what, I know it sounds a bit meh. But I was always surprised. Like, people would say, oh, how did you do that? Or how do you do leadership this way? Or how do you, like, doesn't everybody know how to, like, you just do it, right? You just get on with it.
Most people don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Can I just interject? I think one thing that I've always admired about you is your incredible humility, right? You love learning. You invest a lot in your own professional development.
Yep.
A common trait in top achievers. Top achievers don't even like the term top achievers. But one of the things, one of the most incredible recognitions that you received was the EY Champion Entrepreneur of the Year, and incredibly prestigious award, but one you actually deserved. No, not just as your friend. I think there is an entire business ecosystem that would absolutely say that you earned that. But I know that you attribute all that success not to yourself, but to your entire team. You are a builder of people, Paul. I've never seen, when I read Good to Great by Jim Collins, I think Paul Edginton.
Oh, that's very kind.
I get goosebumps while I'm talking to you, because that's one of the things that I've always admired about you, is this ability to get, excuse me, your ability to mobilize people, right, to achieve common outcomes. And that is something that not many people know how to do. And you do that better than other people. And I think that that's something that I just want our listeners to truly understand, because, and maybe we can explore that a little bit. But, and I'm assuming you've now gone and done that whole process at Vinomofo as well. But it's also you build legacies. That's the other thing I really want you to tap into. I mean, you've handed over SYC. Obviously, I haven't spoken to Mark, so I don't know how they're going, but
they're going great.
On all accounts, it looks like it's going really well.
Yeah.
That is a combination of you finding the right person. You were talking about finding the best people. Mark was at Academy Services beforehand.
Yeah.
As a CEO there, GM, who'd had a very successful run turning a company from a small turnover to a large turnover. And you identified that through your friendship and were able to bring him in because you built such a robust, successful business, not a non-for-profit. Let's put that aside. That is the goal, but your goal was always to help these young people who had somewhere along the line lost hope.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just about giving them shelter or giving them some kind of handout. It was rehabilitative services, getting them into housing, getting them to stand on their own 2 feet again. I remember you telling me a story about the value of a telephone to these young people, and it blew me away that the social connection is so important, even to someone who doesn't have a roof over their head.
Yeah, that young people would if they had the choice between buying data and buying food, they would buy data. Because,
But that's how deep you understood your people, and I guess I'm trying to just flesh that out because I learned so much from you when you told me those stories. We'd go to lunch or we'd catch up for a quick coffee and you would share these stories, and I'd be like, wow, this guy just knows how to run businesses on a level that other people don't get. So I have to correct you. People don't know how to do those things.
Well, they do, but they're just afraid to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So a word that it makes people feel squirmish in corporate, in leadership, in lots of different circumstances is the word love. Mm-hmm. You don't see it used in lots of corporate books and all of that sort of stuff. They talk about also, but most people, not everybody unfortunately, but most people know what love feels like and what it looks like and at its best what it can do. So when you think about that as a concept and you go, so at its best, love is one of those things that not in a airy-fairy, I'm not talking about, singing Kumbaya and plaiting each other's hair, which for you and I is redundant. But what I'm think about it at its best. Mm-hmm. It's something that the more you give it away, it comes back, and you try and so you're trying to give more away, and it comes back. So you think about if you're trying to build wealth, if you're trying to build success, if you're trying to build legacy, and you create a deal flow that the more you give away, it embarrassingly comes back, and you're like, I'm not doing it to get it back, but it comes back, and you then energize people around you to work like that. And if you treat people like that, then you find that it just happens. But it's not fashionable to refer to it like that. You're supposed to give it more dry, clinical sort of things, because the downside of doing that is you get disappointed regularly, or you get hurt regularly, or there's people who can't be, they just can't handle working like that because it's vulnerable, right? You're putting everything into something, and people like to hold stuff back, and that's fine. It's just not that fine working around me, because you won't have that much fun if you're holding stuff back, because I want you to put everything into it, and because I put everything into it, and I put everything into you. However, it's really noticeable, right? Because love's really easy to understand, right? The more you give it, it comes back more. So if you're giving a lot of it to somebody, you're putting a lot of energy into the career development and the dreams and aspirations of somebody working for you, and it ain't coming back, it's pretty easy to identify. And again, lots of people in leadership positions fail to make the decision to cut that off. So there's three things.
Really good insight.
Yeah, three things in my mind all the time, and that is, if you can do it, do it. I'll encourage you, do it. Knock yourself out. Well, what if I make a mistake? Just do it. I could be fine. If you can't do it, but you want to try, let me know and I'll show you how to do it. And I'll support you to do it. I'll create the environment. Whatever it is, we'll show you how to do it. But if you won't, get lost. Because you can.
Cut as soon as the fit isn't there.
Yeah, because if you can but you won't, that's a decision that you're making to hold back. And you know what? Life's too short for that. Like, go. There's plenty of people who'll appreciate you more than I will. So to avoid both of us getting hurt, go away, and we'll just work with the ones who can and the ones who want to.
How did you find doing that? Well, actually, let me ask you a slightly different question to that, and let's stay focused on it because that's brilliant insight. 18 and a half years at SYC, you would have been able to do that and educate everybody else to do it. Walking into a almost new organisation to you, even though you'd been chair of Vinomofo, we both know that being a chair and a CEO can be very different roles. Like, you know, one's about governance and strategy and risk, and the other one is about operations and, you know, funding and driving and people. Were you able to bring that same philosophy into Vinomofo immediately, or has there been a transition, or how have you done that? Like, for someone who's changing careers, how did that transition occur, if it has?
It's occurred now. I reckon it feels like I started.
How long have you been there now?
February as the CEO.
Yeah.
So it's starting to click now in the last 6 weeks or so. But the transition, CEOing is CEOing. Like, it's not different. It's a different context. It's a different domain. But the thing at Vinomofo relative to SYC, and people are like, well, it's very different. It's like, it's not actually. Because you know what? Yeah, because you know what we do? We think about at Vinomofo we sell wine.
I think you just drank wine all day.
That's a bonus, right? But no, we sell wine. It's quite obvious.
Yes.
But think about what wine is and why people buy wine, why the people that are mofos buy wine. That Vinomofo is not for everybody. So we're not insert retailer here who sells whatever to anybody. Our mofos, we know our customers, we know what they like, we know why they're buying wine. They're interested in wine. But think about the great joys in life that war and peace and all those different things. Think about, for example, food. You don't even have to speak the same language, but food is a language of love where you sit and you can share it. Even if you're enemies, you can share a meal and, you know, do all that sort of stuff. And then think about, what is the only beverage that accompanies food? What's with wine, right? Well, perhaps in Russia they would drink vodka. But generally speaking, in
food is always
food and wine
matched with
wine.
Yeah.
And so the idea of food and wine is inclusive. It's about connecting. It's about bringing joy, and it's inclusive. You know, you invite people to share a glass of wine with you. You share wine. If you're a wine lover, you share wine experiences. You talk about, and you don't necessarily think about a glass of wine as like, oh, I loved it because its flavour was X. You talk about great wines you've had because you go, I remember this time I was in this place with these people and the sun was shining. It was a fabulous day and the food was awesome. And so, you know, there's love, right? That's this inclusive experience. It doesn't care whether you're old, young, male, female, you know, successful, doesn't matter. It's about inclusion. So you think about what I was doing at SYC about creating inclusion for people who are not included, and you think about what I do at Vinomofo, it's not that different, right? It's a different way of doing it, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, I love how you put that into context, because it's even to me, it's okay. I didn't think of piecing that together. CEOing, absolutely CEOing. Doesn't matter where and what. You know, you've got to adapt to the environment. But I never would have thought of SYC and Vinomofo being one of the same in terms of that approach. And so that's a really great observation. And I think that just opens up my eyes to looking at things even more differently.
Can I add to that though?
Yes.
Because this is what I think. This is competitive advantage in the future. This is what we should be teaching our kids, right? Is that when you think about what machine learning can do, what data and analytics, and how exciting, like that just excites the bejesus out of me. But the skill, the super skill that we need to teach our kids is humanity. Mm-hmm. Love and humanity combined with machine learning and digital segmentation and personalization. See, because digitization and data analysis can only tell you what's happened before. It can't tell you what's going to happen next. It can predict it based on blah, blah, blah. But you know what? Humanity and abstract reasoning that is associated with humanity and love, mastering that and teaching your kids to master that is competitive advantage in the future. And people at the moment, when you're watching people who are at the moment are losing the ability every day to have a sensible discussion because they're shouting about some conspiracy or they're shouting about some kind of hesitation or skepticism about science or all that sort of stuff, and they're shouting about it. You go, you know what's sad about that is you are redundant. Your way of thinking is redundant, and sadly, that realization will lead to some kind of catastrophic outcome for either community or for them or whatever it is. But that lack of love and humanity will clash with what machines can do. It's dumb, but if you want to, so I get excited about thinking about what should we be teaching our kids? What's the skills that will keep you in front?
And I think abstract reasoning, absolutely, like disciplined thought, really, really important. Mm-hmm. You talked about AI and machine learning. One thing you did mention was personalization under that humanity. I'm assuming at Vinomofo you use a lot of personalization in your marketing.
We do, but I don't think we're scratching the surface yet.
Right. So have you found ways to integrate machine learning and AI into, is that something that you're working on in the future in terms of what you can do with it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. That's the thing that we'll be looking at. So you get, here's a funny thing. You hear people talking about data and data analytics and all of that sort of stuff, and they're like, we've got access to all this data and big data, smart data, linked data, and you go, okay. You're teaching everybody to ask questions, like ask good questions, because all that data is only as good as the question you ask. And if you ask stupid questions, guess what you get out of data?
Nothing.
Stupid answers.
Yeah.
And you can actually paralyze your data system by constantly asking it wrong questions. So then
because you're teaching it to not think the way you want it to think.
It's not formed based on a hypothesis. It doesn't then have an outcome framework where you're going, I have a hypothesis, I understand inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, because I've decided what impact I'm trying to prove. If you don't have that kind of a framework when you're thinking about, is my question relevant to the data? The other thing is, we approach data thinking that as humans we have got a monopoly on the best ideas, but machine learning can create different segments and buckets and spaces that are way beyond the cognitive load of humans. Oh, yeah. Then it's up to us to be able to go, can I do something unique with it? And they're the parts that, I think we're not even scratching the surface on how clever that can be and what good customer experience you can create with that.
Right. So I was going to ask you, where do you see the first wave of application for you at Vinomofo or in fast-moving consumer goods, essentially? Like, where do you see the real benefit for you guys, if you can share that?
I think
is it in customer experience? I guess that's where I'm going.
Yeah, it's definitely in customer experience, and it's targeting your messaging. So, I'll give you an example where it would be like at the moment with current generation data, we would see what you're buying, and we would send you offers. So if you like Pinot and you've been buying Pinot, we'll send you Pinot offers and all that. But then if you randomly bought a box of a mixed white box, at the moment you'd start getting into your feed some white wine offers. The if I could wave a magic wand, what our machine learning would have gone is, so that's anomalous to what you've been doing, and starts to flag it, rather than starting to then send you white offers, which you're not going to buy again because you bought them for your mother-in-law.
And that might irritate you if you're getting all these offers that are not relevant to you.
It irritates you if you're
a
red wine drinker and you start getting white offers. You're like, come on.
And then potentially
you don't know me.
You could lose the customer. That's right.
You don't know me. So we currently.
Love it.
Currently, currently,
a really
it's not
good example
enough
for someone who doesn't quite understand the power of where machine learning and AI fits in.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm glad that because to me that is the customer experience. I know Google's done a lot of work in customer experience and personalization over the last 4 to 5 years, but now with machine learning and AI being far more accessible to everybody else, it's and this is why I think smaller businesses don't need to go, that's not for me. There is plenty of this coming. You've just got to start reading up on it so you're ready to capitalize. And I think you guys, and you're not a small business, you're a medium to large enterprise, hopefully scaling to bigger. I mean, Vinomofo is not just an Australian vendor anymore. You've got Singapore. Anywhere else at the moment, or just Singapore?
We do pop-ups in New Zealand, and we're looking at some other countries, but I'm not going to tell you what they are yet.
No, I didn't think I wasn't going to ask specifically, obviously, but the thing is that you are globalizing, and so the importance about customer experience is going to play a more significant role, because now you've got behaviours of different purchases in different countries.
Right.
So for you, it's more important. I love it, Paul. Now we'll dive into the deeper part of the podcast and get a greater perspective as to who you are and in terms of what makes you tick. And I want to go back to your childhood just very quickly. What in your childhood do you think shaped the type of business person, entrepreneur, and all-round great human that you've become? Like, was there a particular moment in time in your childhood that made you realise that, what impacted you to become who you became?
Yep. There's a very clear moment in my life where that was formed the way that I behave. But preceding that, like I was very fortunate when I won the EY award. Hugh Remington, I remember, asked me sort of what are some of the things that I did to be successful? And I said, well, I was born male, white, Australian, Adelaide, privately educated, nuclear family who loved me on both sides. So my jumping off point was I'd have to work hard to screw up. So in relative terms, am I successful, or am I just as successful as the next guy, but my starting line was way in front? So my starting line was way in front.
And that's wonderful to acknowledge that, because we're all very lucky.
Yeah. So having started way in front, a competitive advantage for me that lots of my peers who I went to school with and were all my age, who are not as successful as I've been, didn't recognise that they were in front, and secondly, probably didn't find a reason to do something different or do that. For me, it was very, very clear. It started on February the 2nd, 1979, and I was 10 years and 2 months old, and my youngest brother arrived, and he wasn't going to live a normal life. We didn't know what that meant at that time, But what it did mean for me was that mum and dad had to focus on him. Didn't mean they didn't love me or give me all the opportunities and all of the things that they would want to, but the attention wasn't on me anymore. And there's a part of me that wanted to get the attention. So, but getting negative attention when they were already stressed wasn't the way to do it. So I just sort of became really aware that I had to be self-sufficient and that I had to put myself in a position to provide for my brother one day when my parents wouldn't be around. And I was acutely aware of that, and I remain acutely aware of that. So
it's a sense of responsibility?
It's a sense of that the advantages that you've been given are not for you to exploit for yourself. That a life of service to somebody else is, it brings you lots of stuff, but if you're doing it just for you, it's not worth it. It's not going to make you happy.
And I love the segue into servantship. Would you call it then fulfillment? Is it this deep, a lot of people spend their whole life searching for, trying to achieve, right? And searching recognition and validation.
Yeah.
One of the common things that I'm uncovering in these interviews with people, but also in my research, is truly successful top achievers. And that's why I never called it successful people. It's top achievers, people that aim for achievement, but truly there is something underlining it all that's far greater than achievement. Seems to be this honourable thing of fulfillment, this ability to actually go, I'm doing something that has true meaning and purpose.
That I would say that's what I would observe of lots of people as well, is that they're not. Some of the top achievers that I've come across that really struck me is people who are top of their game, like superhero people, who pour you a glass of water. They sit down and they pour you a glass of water at the table, and you're like,
do you know I poured you your glass of water?
But
that was my wagering day.
It's one of those.
No,
it's one of those
true.
things where you notice that they still have there's a humility. There's a sense of service. There's a sense of giving.
It's the serviceship, right? To me, see, one of the things that always stood out, and I think the reason why we became magnetic friends straight away was this magnetism of we care about people.
Yeah.
Right? Like deep down, you're family first. I'm family first. Like our values drive us, right? But it's every conversation you and I have ever had privately, there is this great sense of what can we do for others. That's one of the greatest gifts that I learned from you. When you gave me a 3-step process to follow. We won't recite it today. We'll keep that one up our sleeve. But it was one of the things that then you brought into ThinkLab when you came in as one of the mentors in the program. And it's this ability to be able to just go, what, I'm not here to serve myself. I'm here to serve others. And it's wonderful that for you, that servant mentality came from the adversity that your parents were facing at that time, which has turned into a wonderful thing for you. I mean, your relationship with your brother is very, very good, and he plays a significant role in your life all the time. And it's just wonderful that you were able to observe that at the age of 10.
You couldn't miss it. But it's interesting as
gone the other
well.
way.
Yeah. It's one of those things where in my 20s, in my early 20s, I had like a really strong success driver. But when you're a young person in your late teens and early 20s and the front part of your brain hasn't finished developing, so you lack insight, you've got energy and you've got drive. You don't quite know why, but you just, success, you want stuff. You want attention, you want praise, you want whatever those things are, but you lack awareness of like why you're doing it. And for me, my wife whom I adore, has known me since the 80s. And she, in my late 20s, she was like, "You were just a dick." Because I was
Lucy
just
still
so...
tells me that now in my 40s.
Yeah, but you were just like, I just didn't even like you because I wasn't a likable person. I was ambitious and I was after stuff and it was just crap. And I wasn't a good human. And so, and at that stage I got sick. I got chronic fatigue and all that sort of stuff. And that was... Lots of people don't listen to what's going on around them. They don't listen to their body. They're not listening to people around them that they care about. They're just on this thing around this quest for stuff. Like, yeah, it's just...
I'm really glad you've said that because it's even as I'm reflecting, for me, you were lucky enough that you uncovered that in your 20s, late 20s. It took me a very long time. I was, still at 35, 34, searching for all of this, and it was a recovery thing for me more than anything else. And then the light bulb switch. When Lucy and I found out we're having Leonardo, it was like this, oh shit, you've got to grow up. And that for me was the insight that changed my life. It was a wonderful opportunity to go, you know what, I now have to be accountable, responsible, and be the authority for this little person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to suck as a parent. What am I going to do? And
parents think that.
Yeah, but we were really good at, I was really good at what I did. Like there was elements of good and elements of bad, but as a practitioner, I was great. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I have to learn this new skill. And it was this sense of responsibility and serviceship that really came through. And now, as you know, I love being a father. It's something I work very hard at. I'm never going to be amazing at it because it's just such a difficult job. And, you've got adult children almost now to the point that, Griff is, at 14. I've got Lavender who's 4, and it's this incredible journey. And I'm just so lucky that I have very close friends that can guide me on, where they've been. So, and I think that's probably the really wonderful lesson about got to learn from others. I wish I had someone that I could learn from in my early 30s, but you're spot on. I look back at how I failed and how I lost everything at 30 or 31. It's because I didn't listen to people. And so it's wonderful listening to you because I can then reflect, and I know that the listeners who are listening are probably now going, light globe, oh wow. And I'm hoping that if one of our listeners out there is currently going through that transition, press pause and rewind back to the insight around making sure that you're listening to other people. Make sure that when you're in that grind and you're sitting there thinking that you have all the answers, that you actually don't have all the answers. And in fact, there are other people around you that care about you, that you need to go, hang on, pause. Let me just go and reflect on this and find some space to truly understand. I mean, if people just listen to that bit of advice, it'd save them a lot of pain moving forward.
The funny thing is, it's just a truism the whole time. If you find yourself in every situation believing that you're the smartest person in the room, whoa,
you're in trouble.
Big trouble.
Yeah.
And there's a voice inside your head that, particularly when you're, late 20s, early 30s, right, that you're going, man, I'm rocking it. It's like, oh boy. You need somebody in your life who's letting the air out of your tires a little bit because, and it's not about them letting the air out of the tires, it's about you being vulnerable enough to let someone do that to you for your own good.
It's even now though. I mean, you probably
totally.
To me, even now, I'm thinking, wow, where do I need to let my tires down? Go like where do I need to readjust? For me at the moment, it's my health. It's a big thing. I've been listening to a lot of people now. And it's like okay, and then the last year's been difficult because you start training again. You do your knee. For me, it was my 7th operation. And then I'm like, okay, then you get blood clots and like, okay, I'm trying really hard here. And then you get 3 herniated discs. And then you're like, okay, I'm trying really hard here and I can't get it. But you know what? Luck favours the persistent, as Jim Collins says. So you've got to keep working at it. But the thing
I've got 6 screws and 2 cages in my neck, and they said I would never lift above my head. And so I did, last Tuesday, I did 40 chin-ups for somebody who's not supposed to lift above their head.
You can do 40 chin-ups.
I've been working on
Unassisted?
that. I've got a thin band, but it's like,
Wow.
you know,
I can do none.
yeah. So I've been. That was you know, part of that is like, you know, you can't do that. It's like, really?
Chin-ups are hard.
They're hard. Yeah, it's taken 4 years to train to do that. So it is persistence, and it's a bit of those two words. And you and I have talked about this before. 2 years, two words that I have in my head all the time is refuse and decide. Mm-hmm. So you know, you won't be able to do that. I refuse to accept that. I decide to do something different.
That's right. No, I love it. And I love, one of the greatest things about you that I've always really enjoyed is no matter how distant we might be, when we come together, there's always something that you say that I just go, oh, I really need to write that down. And then I go use it. And I practice it, because I find that by practicing something that someone gives you, it's one thing being given a gift of something, right? But then you got to use it. You got to actually build the muscle, right? Your brain's a muscle, and you got to build it. Yeah. So, you know, refuse, decide. I mean, that kind of insight for people is going to be phenomenal. Business is not all flowers and rainbows. We know that, right? And as you know, I tend to like to talk a lot about failure and the experiences around it, because I think people can learn a lot. You know, success and failure leaves clues. But what failure experience do you think has set you up for the success that you've experienced in your life, both professionally and personally?
Look, we all have different failures. I don't see. I see failing is having failures is really what I call school fees. You know, it's just like, what'd you learn? Like, it's not really a failure. It's just a very unpleasant, you know, a very unpleasant school fee. Sometimes school fees are really expensive. You know, the things that...
We both know about that.
Yeah, right. So the things that, you know, I'd had that... I haven't really had things that are... for me, a failure is like catastrophic, you can't recover from. So I haven't had anything catastrophic that I can't recover from. So I've just had lots of school fees. You know, I as like you, somebody who really prizes and values being a dad, having a failed marriage for me with 2 kids was devastating. That was devastating for me. That was a failure where I was like, I didn't even contemplate that was going to be a failure for me, but it was. And I'm really good at it now. I say, you know, it's somewhat, I say it and people think I'm joking when I say, well, I had a practice wife, wasn't that good at that, but I'm really good at it now, and I work hard at it.
And you do work hard.
And I love it, because I realise that, you know, you can't just take that for granted. It just doesn't work where you're going. Life works out the way you plan it. So that, you know, that was, but the, you know, the one where it was a failure, but it wasn't mine, is the most interesting. That has had the, I think, in my leadership career, will be something I point out that was not my failure, but it was my response to it that I'm really proud of and will always be proud of. And that was when I was betrayed by somebody I trusted who stole money.
You and I have spoken about this.
Yeah.
Share it, because if you want, whichever part you can. I mean, that really upset you, because you trusted someone. And you were betrayed.
Yeah, I did, and I, you know, I advocated for them. It was very public. Yeah, and I was, you know, I was on the news being chased by cameras for answers where it looked like I had done something, and I decided that I was just going to be flat out upfront about it, you know, unshakingly so. So you have PR people saying, oh, you should say this or say it that way. And I was like, I'm just not going to do that.
I think you handled that incredibly well.
Yeah, I did. And
as an observer outside.
Yeah, I did. And I'm really proud of that, because I was like, you know, if I was watching or reading this, my bullshit detector would be on high alert, and so I'm going to look out for any of it. So I just spoke really plainly. I remember sitting one weekend on LinkedIn when the news article came out, and people who didn't know anything kept making comments, and I responded to every single one of them within 60 seconds of doing it, to just stop it cascading into nonsense. And it turned out really well. The test of character, when somebody who, you know, was the godfather of one of his kids, it's just, you first hear about it and you go, hang on, are you sure that that's what's happening? And they're like, here's the evidence. And it's like, to unflinchingly go, okay, we're just going to call the cops and we're going to deal with, yeah, but don't you want to find out what's going to happen? It's like, no, that's the right thing to do right now. Let's do the right thing every moment and believe that it'll turn out okay. And guess what? It turned out okay because we did the right thing at every moment.
That lasted a long time.
Yeah, that was...
How many years was it? 4? If I remember correctly?
Yeah, he was doing it for 3 or 4 years, and then
but
the whole process and the trial was a couple of years, a year or something
like
while,
that. But the emotional strain on you too.
Yes,
and look, I think there's a lot of people that can sympathise with the betrayal of someone close to them.
Sure.
In business, but not a lot of people recover from it, because sometimes that pain, that anguish, that frustration, it can really cut you really deeply. Particularly someone like you, who values that human connection, and you know, I've been through it, and it's took me a while. I got really ill over it because I couldn't understand why someone close to me would do that to me. You sit there and go, well, it's just greed, you know. And in your case, it was greed as well. It was finances. It was money, and you know, I think it was much deeper too. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, it was. There were so many things that were bad with it. But the thing for me that has been a really powerful, and it can eat you up if you literally eat you from the inside if you let it. And it was. But it's discovering then the thing that makes me successful is the thing that's my kryptonite then. It's like I care about people and I care about it a lot. So then if a person lets you down or disappoints you, you care about that. So knowing that it's your kryptonite, you got to go, how do I accept that I didn't control that or see it or have responsibility for it? It's in my DNA to take responsibility for everything, right? But learning, then this is a huge lesson I got from that, is I wasn't responsible for that. And I'm not going to be responsible for that. And so it was like, man, I've just had a life lesson scrubbed on me with a wire brush, which I didn't appreciate, but probably good. There's a part of you that goes. It was funny. I went to see a counsellor about it, which is I'd promised everybody that I would, because I was doing all of the things, which particularly men do this thing where you compartmentalise. You go, I'll park that over there and I'll do all the things, and then at some point I'll have I'll be angry with people, or I'll be snarling and you do whatever. You do that thing, and so I started doing that thing, and then I went and saw somebody, and the first 2 meetings I told them, this is what was going on. It was a trauma response, and blah, blah, blah. She's like, okay, can I have some air next week? And I was like, oh, yep. And she said, you so want to control the outcome of everything that that you couldn't control this. It's going to kill you. So you just have to accept, and it's weird, that you have to accept that you don't control everything in the world. And it's one of those things where you're like, do I do that? Do I do that? I do that, don't I? Oh man, I thought I was good at listening. I thought I was good at being aware. And every now and then somebody comes along, lets some air out of your tires, and even then it surprises you. You're like, I thought I was good at that. Jeez. All right, well,
isn't it cool
letting
when
it go.
You get that? Like,
yeah, it's a relief.
Even just watching you, some people are going to listen to this on audio, as others may go to the YouTube channel and watch the video. Right then, your expression,
Yeah.
it was like you were reliving that moment when you said that, and it's a really beautiful thing to see, because I kind of go, oh yeah, even just listening to you, I do that, and I really shouldn't do that, and I should improve on that. And I want to ask you another question. I don't want to just bump away from that. There's something I want to ask you. When you're overwhelmed and when you're unfocused, which for you is, the unfocused part is quite rare.
That's pretty rare.
What do you do to realign?
What do I do to realign when I'm out of? It does happen. It happens frequently, but I don't let it get out of whack. There's lots of techniques. One of the small ones is to shake my hands. It's weird, right? But what is happening when you're becoming unfocused and you're getting overwhelmed is your body starts going into a fight or flight response. So the blood starts accumulating around your heart and your lungs because it's ready to fight or flight. So shaking your hands starts to draw the blood out. And if you start doing it, and if you're listening, in the next 60 seconds, start shaking your hands and feel what happens. And you start feeling the blood coming out of your chest and coming into your hands and moving to your feet. And do you notice how you don't feel?
Yeah, you're right.
You're not feeling as stressed and as anxious.
I didn't even know that.
So just shake your hands, and it's amazing physiologically. It starts taking the blood away from your fight-flight response, and your brain starts to not become so overwhelmed because it's now not obsessed with fighting or running away. It's starting to create space for other things to come back into it. And what it allows you to do is to focus again. So I will.
When I see you shake your hands,
Do it all the time. You'll see me doing it all the time.
I'll start getting nervous because it means I'm pissing you off.
No. It's not that. But it is a. You don't want to do that though, because I can focus a lot of attention on that.
No, I would not want to. That's actually. Where did you learn that? Was it just something you picked up by reading and understanding how that worked? Because that really does work, and it's quite instant. It's not. You don't have to do it for 60 seconds. If you do
it's almost straight away, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's like you can feel it.
And you can feel it in your feet.
Yep. And your feet start tingling.
First bit.
Yep.
Right.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So
that's a brilliant technique. That's amazing.
David Griggs taught me that doing a public speaking program that he did called Beyond Words.
Right.
And one of the things he did was before you speak, before you go on stage, shake your hands and move the blood out. And I did that at this public speaking thing, and I was like, man, that is super good. It works. So that's what I do.
Yeah, when you said shake hands, I was just like, where's he going with this? And then that again, I love it. Okay, so that's how you deal with, say, being overwhelmed, right? I'm certainly not going to push on the unfocused thing because you are incredibly focused.
But when things under pressure, there's lots of people. I've been blessed. I don't know where it came from, but I have it. The more stressed other people become, the calmer I become. I'm able to hold a lot of things in my head at the same time, and I can see patterns in doing it. So, but the downside of that is then when you're alone and you're unpacking, you do this, God, fuck, what's wrong with me thing. You just do. So you've got to just find a way that when you're doing that, shake your hands and just sort of like get away from that, because it's not going to help you. You start asking yourself bad questions. What's wrong with me? What is a pretty bad question?
It's funny, I was seeing we're all so vulnerable on this show right now. I came home last night and I had two board meetings. I had to chair one board meeting from 3 o'clock to 7 and then straight into another one because of the public holiday, so one got moved. And I didn't get home till 9:30. And we filmed 3 podcasts yesterday too, and combined. And I came home and I said to Luch, I don't feel great. She's like, what? And it was that whole breaking down the whole day, because I'd listened to all these amazing people and their stories and capturing it, and then trying to bring the focus in for the board meetings and back to back. So it's like 6-7 hours marathon work trying to just get it through your head and dealing with stakeholders. And it's those questions. And for me, I just go and talk to Luch. I just say, okay, I just need to talk to you. and she knew. She patted my head,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, "I'm just going to listen to you." And I'm like, I don't want to ask myself these bad questions because there isn't anything wrong. I know this is not right the way I'm thinking, and it's really interesting that when you said that, I thought, wow, we all have different coping mechanisms, and it's important to have them. And I guess that's why I'm happy to share what I went through last night, because a lot of people never see that vulnerability in me. There was, and it's same with you. We've got to do our jobs, and we've got to be very compelling and very direct, and we also have to, you and I come from a very similar school of focus, right? Like discipline, and for me, I'm still learning the way of the Jedi, right? Like you're kind of Yoda, and I'm still kind of down here trying to find my way. But what I love is that we all encounter the same challenges. It's just how we handle those challenges. It's your idea of refuse and decide, right? And how we cope with it. So that was really good. Seeing we're on the path of giving value to everybody that's listening, which book or books do you think have greatly influenced your life?
That have greatly influenced my life? You'd like to think when I was reflecting on this question, I was like, mine are pretty embarrassingly thin. But early on, one as a young person was Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. It's had an amazing effect on me. And then when you think of early in the podcast, when you think about the story I told about my brother, and then you read Of Mice and Men, you go, oh. But that was for me. I've read millions of, all of the...
You're a reader.
Yeah, so I've read all of the, Covey and Collins and all of those great books and all of those. But interestingly, the next one that I would mention is another embarrassingly thin one called Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
Super simple, but it's because both of those books are easy to read. And the old, I didn't have time to tell you a short story, so I gave you a long one. Mm-hmm. The brilliance of both of them is they are short and they're a mirror.
Yeah.
And you figure it out.
Who Moved My Cheese is also a very favourite book of mine.
Yeah. It's
because it's short.
Exactly.
I like that. And you can get through it.
You get through it. Things like Kenneth Blanchard's stuff, where he writes short...
The 1 Minute Managers.
Yeah, and the monkey meets the 1 Minute Manager, or books like Fish.
Yeah.
They are simple. They're not complex. I've been fortunate to go to Harvard. I've been fortunate to go to Stanford. I've read lots and lots of really clever management stuff. But the answer to your question, the ones that have most affected me, are the simple ones like that.
That's amazing. And it's for those of you who don't obviously know you well, yes, you have invested a great deal in your PD. You have been to Stanford. You have been to Harvard, and I've picked your brain every time you come back because it's like, I'm going to get there one day. Yeah. And look, we're almost at the end, only because we've got time restrictions, with busy lives. Do you have a business hero?
Yeah, I've got several.
Yeah. Who and why? Or who's someone that you really look up to?
Right now?
Yeah.
Right now, Justin Dry, who I work with at Vinomofo, is one of the cleverest, most resilient, most positive people I've ever met.
You've said that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have much respect for Justin and the way he goes about things, and he alongside Andre created Vinomofo and had a vision for Vinomofo from scratch.
It's really interesting you mentioned Justin. Andre was on the show, and Andre also strongly suggested that Justin has been instrumental in everything.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that the two of you who've worked with someone.
Yeah.
Maybe Justin's got to be on the show next. Apparently he's back. He's living here again.
He's at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's amazing. He's one of my business heroes. The other one is a guy that, not, I guess, generationally behind me, lots of people don't know, but a guy called Peter Ritchie.
Okay.
Peter Ritchie was the guy that I met in my 20s when I was in Sydney. He was the first non-American CEO of McDonald's. He ran McDonald's in Australia, and everybody's like, right, McDonald's.
But he eventually got on well.
No, that was you're thinking of Charlie Bell.
Charlie Bell, okay.
No, Pete was before Charlie.
Oh, right.
Pete was before Bob Mansfield. Pete was the first guy.
Right. Okay,
So
wow.
there are only 4 stores at that stage, and he was the accountant, and the American CEO had a blue. And Pete gave a speech when I was in Sydney, and was talking about, being successful and that sort of stuff. And he did if you ever want to ask me a question, just ask me. And so I saw Pete last year. I've been asking Pete questions since 1993.
You're being a serial pest of questions.
Yeah,
you love asking questions.
Yeah, I love
you
him.
You spend a long time working out your questions. You ask very good questions.
Yeah, I said that at the beginning. I ask Pete questions all the time, but at the time, because the context is, I remember that patch where I said I was in my 20s and I didn't kind of get everything.
Yeah.
I said, when did you get your first Mercedes? And how did you get it?
You do love Mercedes.
Yeah, so that was a pretty stupid question, but he my questions got better, and he was a very good mentor.
Did he answer your question?
Yeah. I'm not going to tell you the answer because that was between us.
So, Paul, one final question. What habit or belief or behaviour has improved your life the most? Something that would help someone else.
Behaviour that that I can add value, believing that I can and do add value. Now that sounds like a bit, but genuinely in the insecurity for the first 50 years of my life that I had to keep proving that I was valuable. I've reached a point in my career, in my life, where I'm like, actually it's okay to think that I'm good at stuff, and it's okay to think that I add value. And now it's my job to understand what that value is, so I can teach it and proliferate it. But I didn't really give myself enough credit for that for a very, very long time. And in doing so, I wasn't creating legacy. So when I think about, again, another super proud moment of mine when I had decided and spoke to David about leaving SYC, I said to him, we're going to do the best leave ever. This is going to be I'm going to win the Norm Smith, we're going to win the grand final, I'm going to get the Norm Smith medal, and then I'm going to go, and I'm finished. And you're going to have somebody really awesome take over from me. And it just happened like that. Of course it did. It was all an accident, right? It just happened like that. But it was because by that stage I knew I had added as much value to that as I was going to, and it was pretty good, but it was time for somebody else to now take it. If I still had this mindset of having to constantly prove myself, I would still be there trying to prove myself and doing it. But I think SYC will be better for me giving it over to somebody else, and I'll go do something else as well.
Certainly know
and everybody's
the person
happy.
you gave it to has an abundance of energy.
He's pretty good.
Right? He's pretty good. And he's had great mentoring you as well. Paul, thank you for coming in here today, sharing phenomenal insights. I mean, there's so much there that I want to recap, but I'm just going to transcribe the podcast.
Well, you've been very generous. I
thank
you.
Up.
You're very kind.
Look, not only do I value your time because I know how busy you are, I value our friendship. more than anything else, and it's because of the wisdom that you've shown today and the care that you have for other people. And I'm just very privileged and lucky that I get to see that, not as often as I'd want to, but you are committed to family like I am. And after this, we are going to check diaries and get this. Just anyone listening, we've actually been trying, I think, for 2 years now to get our families back to have lunch together, but obviously COVID hasn't helped.
I'm for those listening as well, I'm a bad friend. Not because I'm a bad friend but like I'm hopeless at returning calls. I'm hopeless at making times that are within a reasonable amount of time. Like it takes forever because I feel every minute with what I'm doing. So I'm the bad friend that says, okay, so how about the 30th of November? And people are like, really?
That I'm not going to deny.
Yeah.
When you say, let's do this date, and then rips out these dates that are like miles away, and you're like, okay, I know I'm booked for a month, but 3 months?
Yeah.
Sure, say yes. Look, mate, thank you so much.
My pleasure, thank you.
It has been an honour and a privilege to have you here today. And as always, you are serving just the way that I love to see you serve. So thank you, Paul.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.